You know, Linda, this is, I reflect on the fact we have 30 million hits on our YouTube, Robert H. Jackson Center YouTube's sites of videos and stuff like that, but the very first ones were ones you took of my interviews, which I literally had sliced and diced, where I said, here's a tape, you know,
right,
this time code, and you managed to grab it, put it up, and then our website. I mean, that's what it got it going. So it was all about Linda Cowan, and so glad on our 25th anniversary as we're kind of cranking things up here. How did you even know about us? I can't remember.
Well, the only way that I got connected to the Jackson Center was through Randy Sweeney, because I did freelance work on their annual reports, and I know for a fact that he would have been the one that made the connection.
And then you came over to the Jackson Center. Did I meet with you then? How did that work?
Initially? I think initially I met with Raleigh.
Okay. With an eye towards doing some graphic stuff, or?
Yeah, it was all about working with Becky Robbins with publications, and she would write the newsletters, I would format them, get them to the printer for printing. So I really came in as graphics and communication design, and it segued into, it just seemed as though people came in to do a certain thing, but because there were many needs, the focus of your job broadened to fit in all of those things. So, I would do the invitations that went out to people for events. I would do the welcome panels that highlighted the program for the evening and recognized the sponsors. Did Christmas cards, that little postcard book. Was involved in that Sid Shavitz exhibit and the booklets, and then once Becky left, at one point the couple newsletters fell to my taking over the whole thing, writing it, designing it, formatting it, getting it printed. So yes, I did a spectrum, but it was all connected with communications, the website, the print publications.
So what'd you think about us? I mean, the reality is all of a sudden you're kind of dropped in like a parachute into an organization as a professional, and next thing we keep throwing stuff at you which has some substance. You have to put it into some time.
Right.
Did you learn something about us?
Oh, I learned a lot. Even certainly I learned a lot more about websites, because I didn't, it's not like I had 10 years of experience of converting your files into moving files and uploading them to the website. But I had the skills to do it, so it worked out. And it was interesting that so few people were doing so much. I mean, it was a very small, basic crew, and it was like we had quite a few stagehands. It seemed like you were the driving force, and Raleigh was a driving force, because that's when I came in, when Raleigh was there. Dan Bratton had already passed, and so I was there for Raleigh Kidder, Don Greenhouse, and the beginning of Adam Bratton's tenure. So, but I worked a lot with the worker bees, Carol Drake, Rich Fisher, Fran Galbato, I used to say she was very good about all the cataloging and things like that, and some of the volunteers that I'd work with. I can remember Ann Cole. It seems as though there was a somebody from Warren.
Steve Massa.
Yeah, and it just seemed as though everybody was very hardworking and driven and focused on what the next thing was, because there was always quickly coming another next thing.
There was always something
Right.
coming, the next thing. And
Right.
I'm reviewing that all now, and I know that people had varying interests. Fran wanted a store. I mean, she wanted a store there. She loved history. Carolyn Volk, remember Carolyn?
Yes, I do.
And she wanted the triptychs, or nobody knew how to write them except you. But the concept came where we ought to have something to hand out, and I was more the program rah-rah, face of the organization, and Raleigh was out gathering money and
Yes.
the facility itself.
Right.
And our goal was, in fact, to do a program a month, just to get some credibility.
Mm-hmm.
And you, unfortunately, had to kind of put that into print.
Well, things moved quickly along, and certainly it was good that I could work independently because, I just more or less, this is what we're doing. And then I do my part.
The web page, because we really didn't have we didn't have a web page before that. I don't think before you came, did we?
You did have a web page, and there was always, apparently it was difficult to get things on the web.
Oh.
And we segued over to a different way to do it. And I had worked with Jesse Earlbaum in New York
Mm-hmm.
on the website. And I mean, I think he's a website genius. And I think that he came to me through one of the Shepherd boys, I think maybe
Right.
Zach, maybe.
Yep. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And the website, at that time, it was harder to make websites duplicate what you might do visually on print.
Mm-hmm.
So, I would be told, that's not by anybody at the Jackson Center, but by web people, well, that's very nice, but there's no way we can do that. So it became what it could. But yeah, I print everything. I mean, I used to convert those documents from students that were in that program that Anita Sanctuary ran through the Albany,
Right.
Albany, New York State. I don't know if that was the Bar Association.
It was, yeah.
But then the students across the state would write those essays, and then I would convert them to PDFs so that they could be out there for people to read, and the winners would be announced. And so,
Wow.
there was, as I say, there was always a lot going on, and it was good to get all of that out on the website, and somehow the viewership increased, and the website had very good analytics so that you could analyze exactly
Right.
where the hits were, how long people were staying. I mean, there was a lot of statistical information that I think helped, kind of focus maybe some of the efforts.
Yes, and from my perspective, when you're out seeking funding, you like to say how many eyes are on the Jackson Center, people
Mm-hmm.
not only just showing up at the events, that's
Right.
that's the attendance part, but here are views, and I know how excited I was when you were able to take what was otherwise buried, the videos components, and put them up
Mm-hmm.
on the YouTube sites, and to also then categorize them, clerks, Supreme Court clerks, and Nuremberg people and stuff like that.
And certainly, I guess that's today's TikToks,
It's today's TikTok.
you,
And for me, it was just, wow, you can see what it is we have out there.
right.
And that was you. That was Linda Cowan.
That's good.
Well, it was. and Did you have a chance to interact at all with any of the participants that came? You know, we were on the other side. You know,
Right.
Raleigh and I were out there
Right.
rah-rahing, but did you get a chance to meet any of them?
Well, I met Sandra Day O'Connor, which was exciting. It certainly, I'm sure for everybody it was exciting, but I think for women in particular to see Sandra Day O'Connor and know what she had achieved and was exciting. There were some programs that were a little disappointing, that maybe they didn't quite meet the hype that I expected. But for the most part, anything I went to, it was great to see a real connection to someone that you no longer had access to. So it was pretty exciting. I mean, the Barnett sisters were here. I believe it was a very rainy day when William Rehnquist was here. But the only one that I can really remember meeting would be Sandra Day O'Connor, which would be the most memorable to me. You know, some of the other ones I might have met. Another visitor that I thought was extremely distinguished and impressive was Whitney Harris. I've never seen anyone with such posture and presence. He's so tall and straight, and you know, that great head of hair, and he just seemed like, and I know nothing about him, or you know, maybe I talked to him, but he seemed as though he would be a very staunch advocate and someone who in the military people would have had great respect for.
All of that's true. All of that's true. Yeah, he walked into a room and he came right out of Hollywood. He was everything was correct about Whitney.
Yeah.
But you know, the wonderful thing is that you were able to capture in words what I know some of us were unable to do, or more importantly, didn't even have time to do. You know, and that's the most critical thing. Certainly today, when we're looking back 25 years, what did we do? And it's really Linda Cowan's words. I don't know if you ever thought of that as such, but you laid down some history.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. At that time, we had Raleigh, and then Raleigh retired, and then it was Greenhouse, and then the first part of Adam Braddon. But at the same time, this was one of your jobs. You had so many of them. What was the profession?
Well, my profession would have to be graphic design, graphic arts. Always involved in printing. You know, I wasn't one that people really sought out because I had any educational background in a field. You know, I went to school for majoring in liberal arts with a concentration in sociology, which wasn't, I grew up in printing, and that's...
Were your parents in that?
Yeah.
What was that?
They had a print shop in Fredonia.
Okay.
And I mean, from the time I was little, I was around print. My father at one time was part owner of the Fredonia Censor, and you know, we just lived and breathed anything that had to do with things. You know, I thought it was just sort of ordinary that you could go into a dark room and develop pictures and, you know, do those things, because I think when you're young, you think you don't understand that everybody has different experiences. I certainly never thought, gee, I wonder if these kids know how to do this. And we used to spend a great deal of time proofreading and collating. I mean, we were involved in that, and then when someone was going on maternity leave that was working in typesetting and all that, then I got called in, and then I just kept going. So a lot of my work has been freelance, but I certainly have had some employment in nonprofit as well as profit sector. And now the world has changed so dramatically
Yeah.
that I don't even know if there's still much of a print component to what the Jackson Center does. I mean, once I left the Jackson Center, I rather lost touch with things.
Mm-hmm.
For a while I read John Barrett's newsletter, and it still comes into my mailbox, but I don't usually read it. It's like, oh, that's behind me. But that did bring into mind that those International Criminal Court, the people who came to participate in that, I did meet some of those.
Mm-hmm.
And on one particular occasion, they were being driven from the Jackson Center to Chautauqua, and I was one of the drivers. And I don't know how this came to pass, but it's not unusual for me to think that people want to see something while they're here.
Mm-hmm.
So I drove along 86 and wanted them to see the spectacular view from the rest area, thinking that that was just something spectacular, especially since if you've only been inside the Jackson Center. And what surprised me, and I didn't realize, it was probably the most surprising thing, was that these participants, when they are other places, most often have security details, and which they didn't have in Jamestown.
Mm-hmm.
And when we got up to that perfect place, I think they were totally shocked and no one wanted to get out of the car. And I almost think because it would have been a prospective place to be shot. I mean, I just had the idea. It's like, well, this was a bad thing. I think that they were just, we'll just keep driving on. But I did do that thinking it would be a nice thing to see, but I think there was an element of fear because there wasn't a security detail with us.
That's interesting. And I think part of that's true, especially if they're some of the courts all had security detail. And
Right.
all the chief prosecutors, because I'm sure you had chief prosecutors, they had security detail.
Right.
Here in America, they don't travel with them over the United States.
Right.
Nobody even knows who they are.
Right, and we didn't, the Jackson Center didn't provide any. It's like just some unknown person shows up with a car and they get in with me and then I drive them to this location. It's like, oh, no, I don't think we're getting out.
That's a great memory. I've heard that story. David Crane will be interested to hear that story. You remember David?
I remember the name, not
Yeah.
I couldn't put a face to him.
But the International Humanitarian Law
Right.
Dialogue still continues. It's just had its 16th, hard to believe.
Okay.
But we were the guys that started it, and
Right.
between Carol Drake and others, and it was chaos. That couple of days when the people would come in and we needed drivers, we go to the airport. It was really stressful, wonderfully stressful, but it was nevertheless
Right.
stressful. So all hands on deck. So
Right.
yeah, I'm glad you were recruited.
Well, I'm not so sure they were.
Well, this has been great. Is there a question you thought I'd ask you as you were coming in today that I haven't?
No, I really didn't know quite what to expect. Because as I say, I was more of a background stagehand person. And but it was an extremely interesting experience for me and great exposure. I always appreciated John Barrett. He was he could be a critical, he could be a harsh critic, but I always learned something from John. And I've always appreciated that.
Yeah.
So, and everybody I met, great people, great experience, and part of it. And that was all due to Randy Sweeney.
We are. It's good.
Yeah.
Well, stay tuned because we're having something honoring the 25th, and no doubt you'll be part of it.
Well, I look forward to it.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks, Linda.
Thanks, Greg.